was no fog, I'd never have found this.
I suppose we are doing the right thing, aren't we?
You are doing the sensible thing in joining the orbit of the sense sphere, where all Doctor Who news is monitored and discussed by our talking sense. Making sense, Brendan.
Yeah, we're back. Hello, good to see you, everybody. So, this little Doctor Who channel that started in December 2023 at the height of the specials, I was full of excitement. Full of excitement and anticipation. And then very quickly, from the Davros announcement, remember that? The female presenting Time Lord Guff and the bi-generation homoerotica to the 15th Doctor raiding his wife's dresses to spice up his barren sex life just before he regenerated into Billie Piper doing her Joker grin. My glee turned to grimace, and here we are now with no TV show and no Doctor. But help is at hand. As among the glitterati within the media, there are Doctor Who fans out there. And we have a great Whovian, self-confessed geek, to join us today. So this should be pretty enjoyable, Doctor Who fans together. It might bring us some cheer from this Doctor Who wake we're also unnecessarily involved in. Now, the Who pets, by the way, have haunted me almost as long as my show has been going on, and they've compiled a special introduction for our media guest. Haven't seen it yet, because he's a proper media guest, proper guest. So we're going to roll out the Who pet carpet and give him a proper welcome. So here we go. Roll the credits, Who pets.
On Joe Mangle from Neighbours.
Everyone's favourite handyman. Get him on, Brendan.
It is not Mark Little.
Are you having a laugh? What the f...
You got it wrong. It's Mark Littlewood.
Who the chuffing hell is he when he's at home?
The popular Conservative. He's on GB News, Talk TV. Mike Graham. Oh, Jesus wept.
Oh, grief, Grandad.
The wife has that on.
I was the last popular Conservative. Look at me.
I'm off down the pub.
Oh, sorry about that, Mark. I mean, I can't...
What can you do, Brendan? You can't trust the Who pets. Look, it was good to find another popular Conservative, even if they were skeletal, my friend. You know.
Yeah, you're looking good on it. You're looking good. Oh, well, welcome to the Doctor Who wake. Does it feel like a wake, Mark? I mean, you know, in this current malaise that we're in.
Yeah, of course it does. A very predictable one, though, right? I mean, I think most of us thought it was going to peter out and end this way. And it's pretty grim. Look, it will come back. There will be another bite at the cherry. But yeah, it's for the best, isn't it? I mean, I would have preferred this, I think, over Disney saying, you know what, let's have another 2 series of Shooty Gatwa or whatever. I think it had fallen so far down the toilet that you had to hit the pause button. We've got to hit refresh. Let's hope when we hit refresh, it's more like the 2005 refresh button than the disaster that we got with Disney.
Now, being a Doctor Who fan, does it feel different this time? You know, some people saying, oh, it's the wilderness years again. We know there's an invitation to tender that they'll eventually get drafted, but does it feel different this time to the other times we've all endured?
Well, I'm actually much more confident than I was in 1989 or in 1996 after the movie. I thought in 1989 we may never see it again. And when the McGann movie didn't take flight, the pilot sort of didn't work, I kind of thought, well, that might just be the end of it. Now, because of the success of 2005 onwards, we can argue, Brendan, about when that success ends, but certainly for Eccleston and Tennant 1, I am actually, I think it was RTD who said this, Brendan, that Doctor Who is now in kind of British cultural mythology, a bit like rather than thinking of a TV series, it's more like Robin Hood or King Arthur or Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
You know you're going to see him again in some sort of guise, and I think Doctor Who is now stronger than it was in the wilderness years. In that, I am certain it will be back on our screens, not for a few years. So we're all going to have to wait a while, but it will be back, no doubt about it.
You know, when they say that though, Mark, don't you get that horrible feeling that there's a capturing of it going on? That once they say it's like Robin Hood and all the rest of it, what they're saying is this is now a key program for us to fight over, and as you know, get into certain kind of debates and messaging.
Yes, that's true. So when it comes back, if it is of the kind of Whittaker Gatwa woke style, if it's being used as a vehicle to make really crass, on the nose political messages. By the way, I don't mind political messages in Doctor Who. They've always been there, but they've been done really cleverly, really subtly. I mean, the Green Death is a pro-environmentalist story, right? Malcolm Hulke was, I think, literally a communist, wasn't he? He was certainly a socialist. So I don't mind that. The problem with it is it was all just so on the nose woke. I don't mind a clever story like The Green Death or what was it? The Curse of Peladon, for example. That was a story about Britain's entry into the common market, right? So a really clever analogy that you can read through it. What I hate is when it is just so on the nose. It is like throwing a brick into your face. If they do that again, they're sunk. But here's my hope. All right, it's a hope and a prayer, Brendan, more than it's a certainty or a prediction even. I think in a whole range of areas, we have gone beyond peak woke, and production teams and writers now know that. So the Marvel universe has slipped into that and has nearly died on its backside as a consequence. Reboots, I think, but it takes a long time to unravel this. So I'm quite friendly with Mark Millar, the comic book writer.
Yeah.
And his view seems to be that it takes a few years to unwind, and to walk back something that's taken a bad path. So you don't see instantaneous results, even if there's been a decision made that actually we can't persist with this. Everybody hates it. No one's watching it. Not commercially viable. God knows how much money Disney have lost on this ludicrous gamble. So I think by the time, when do we think we're going to see it again? 2030?
Yeah.
I think by the time we get there, we would have gone well past peak woke, and it will be something akin to the show that we all know and love, ignoring the last two Doctors, basically.
So do you want the Director General's job? Because you sound like him. He's going, we can creatively renew Doctor Who. We can do it. And of course, depending on what type of Doctor Who fan you are, you can either be highly cynical and going, oh, do me a favor. You've been doing Doctor Who for ages as an institution, and look where we are. One of my sources tells me in his kind of relationship with the BBC that the BBC executives think the numbers have been great. Everything's hunky-dory. They just want more content made. That's all. They don't want to listen to us. So, yes, that statement is true, Matt Britton. We can creatively renew Doctor Who. It's just, are you actually ever going to go back to behind the sofa?
Yeah. It's a good question. Look, I mean, I'm surprised to hear that the BBC thinks the numbers were great. It is fair to say, in all of the sort of doom mongers who point to, my God, look how many people watched City of Death or Ark in Space or whatever it might be, that because television is now so fractured, a BBC show getting 4, 5 million, 6 million is heroic. And therefore, you're not really comparing like with like. If the BBC would now settle for its top-rated shows getting, say, 4, 5, 6 million, they'd consider that a great success. 7, 8, 9 million, almost unreachable. So that's changed even since the show was rebooted in 2005, right? But the other thing they care about, which they have not had, has been critical acclaim. Right? If the Gatwa series had only been watched by 100,000 people, but they were winning BAFTAs left, right, and centre, and The Guardian was giving every single episode 5 stars and saying this is the greatest science fiction ever produced, that can excuse away the poor audience numbers. But there's been no critical acclaim, and there's been very little audience. By the way, worth saying, might not quite be the case, but the BBC itself might be in a very, very different situation in 2030 than the one we face today, right? The new Director General's already said the licence fee might well be coming to an end. So my hope would be that if the BBC is forced to pivot to a more commercial position, then actually caring about audience numbers. And it's not totally caring about audience numbers as well, is it? Because for a show like Doctor Who, you want a relatively small slice of the audience to be hugely actively engaged, so they buy all the merchandise and everything. That's quite a money spinner as well. So you can look at the audience numbers, but let's just say, sake of argument, the audience numbers were 3 million. But 300,000 of those, 10% of those, are so up for it, so in love with the show that they are buying, they're cosplaying, they're buying, action figures, they're subscribing to magazines, they're buying all the books, they're buying all the posters. That's quite a part of the overall budget of it as well. And of course, they have royally cheesed off that fandom segment of the market, haven't they? Overwhelmingly. I mean, how many Shooty Gatwa action figures have been sold compared to even the vintage stuff that they're still producing now, let alone the kind of big peak of 2005 onwards. So it would be better if the BBC was forced to be a commercial institution, because then it would have to look at these things rationally, rather than just saying, well, I quite like it, seems to be doing the right thing, seems to be sending the right messages, let's make another season. And if the viewing figures halve, why do I care? In a commercial environment, you are forced to care a lot, because if one of the shows you're running sees its viewing figures halve, that show gets cancelled and you lose your job. So we've got to get the right incentives in place. And I'm afraid at the moment, the BBC does not have the right incentives in place because of the way it is financed.
I'm fascinated, having been a former teacher, assessments and all the rest of it. I find it fascinating that they've changed the rules. They mark their own homework, don't they? But basically, they're saying I've been told they're happy with 1 to 1.5 million live, and then of course, iPlayer will do its kind of game of consolidation where the same person watching 8 times counts as 8 people. But they've changed the ground rules there. I, as a content producer on YouTube, 1 view counts as 1 view. Mm-hmm. So they've doctored everything, and as well as doctoring, they've lowered the estimation of what's a good program. So it just seems to me commercially they are trying to kind of cheat the rules because they're not acting commercially. Of course, you've just referred to it. We've got Sky taking over ITV content. You've now got BBC then going, we must react, we must be nimble. And of course, this is going to impact on shows like Doctor Who, on their cost, on what's possible. Because I'm just wondering if content's going to be kin, Mark, and it's just going to be grabbing franchises just to litter platforms like Netflix.
Yeah, could end up that way. I mean, content is king ultimately, isn't it? But what do you think of this, Brendan? I mean, I'm not an expert on how the finances of television work, but one theory is that basically live television is over, right? Other than for breaking news stories and for sports. That in future, it won't be the case that we all sit down at whatever time it might be, 6:30 on a Saturday for sake of argument, and watch Doctor Who as it is broadcast live. In fact, if you don't want to do it then because you're running late, you can start watching it on catch up half an hour later, a day later. The right commercial thing would be this, right? That for any TV series, frankly, if you want to watch it as it premieres, there might be a cost involved. So if you want to watch the next episode of Doctor Who or potentially Coronation Street or anything else, as soon as it's available, we're going to charge you, I don't know, £1.99. If you want to watch it within 48 hours, we're going to charge you 99p. And then it's free as part of your subscription beyond that. In the same way that, it's if a movie hits our screens, initially you have to pay in Sky Box Office or whatever, £9 to watch it. If you're willing to wait long enough, it will emerge as one of the free movies available. So I think they have got a sort of fair point that this idea that live views is what matters. Way back in the day, of course, if you didn't watch it live, you'd never get to see it at all. But that is emphatically not the case now. So I would think it is reasonable to measure it on total numbers of eyeballs whenever those eyeballs turn up to hit play. And surely the commercial decision is to get to fans. If there are hardcore fans of any given series, there clearly is of Doctor Who, but it can apply to anything else that you're putting on television. If you want to see it early, we're going to charge you a bit of a fee. If you want to see it quite early, we'll charge you a slightly smaller fee. If you're willing to wait, it's a bundle in your subscription package. That seems to me commercially the right way of presenting these sort of options to viewers, no?
What about this then? So my show yesterday talked about BBC Studios are in it to win it, but this one also came out yesterday. The BBC Director General supports the streamer license fee plan, but says enforcement will be difficult. Too right, it'll be difficult.
Yeah.
I'm not going to read it all out, don't worry, because everybody knows. Yeah, basically, instead of grabbing your utility bills, instead they're going to put it onto your Netflix bill or onto your Disney Plus bill.
Yeah, this is, I mean, these are the last screams of death of the people who still fancy a BBC funding model, which is along the lines of that you get a whole chunk of money without the express consent of the people wanting to buy your service. I can't see this going anywhere. Evasion is extremely simple. I think this would be a political disaster if they brought it in. Look, you know, as you probably know, Brendan, my background is in economics. I ran the Institute of Economic Affairs for a good time.
Yeah.
And the abolition of the BBC license fee was something that we continually agitated for. But let me do my boring economics bit, Brendan. There was a sort of practical case for it back in the day, because the BBC was what economists call a public good. And just to define what that means, it doesn't mean it's necessarily good for the public. What it actually means is that you are providing a service where there is no cost to having one additional consumer. And that's true at the moment. The BBC costs, you know, if you're watching a TV show, it's the same cost whether you have 100 viewers or 101 viewers. There's no cost to an additional person watching it. And there's no excludability. So if you are broadcasting to number 7 Acacia Avenue, the people at number 8 Acacia Avenue can get the feed, right? Just by shoving a coat hanger as an aerial on their roof. So you couldn't exclude people. So back in the day, either the entirety of Acacia Avenue gets the TV pictures and the radio signals, or none of Acacia Avenue gets the radio signals and the TV pictures. That's obviously changed with technology. We've all got completely used to, do you want a Netflix subscription? Yes or no? Yeah. A Disney Plus subscription, Amazon Prime, Sky Sports. What package do you want? Do you want the Formula One as well as the football? So now technology has allowed it excludability, and the BBC, in my mind, should just operate as a subscription service. By the way, if it did, I think it would flourish, because you wouldn't have this political argument about the license fees, 185 quid a year or whatever. Can we get it up to 195? You could charge a whole range of different things for different menus, right? So I haven't got kids, so I don't need the CBeebies channel, right? I can scratch that off the list. It might be that, you know, I don't want this part of it either. So just as I construct my Sky package around what my interests are, the BBC would do likewise. And I reckon, on average, they could probably get more than 180 quid out of each household. I mean, this is a very, very, I mean, I do pay the license fee. I sometimes I'm an R about whether I should take the principal position of boycotting it, but I abide by the law. Some people think that's a bit cowardly of me, but I do abide by the law. But it's a tiny proportion of what I spend on consuming content. If Doctor Who was good, I'm willing to pay a tenner an episode to watch it as soon as it's available.
Yeah.
But they're not, you know, they're not squeezing me dry. I mean, why aren't they charging me that? I mean, that would be the sensible profit maximizing thing to do. But because they're locked into this old, we need to be financed through general taxation or through the license fee. What a load of nonsense. If they went going commercial would be the salvation of the BBC, not its death.
And I actually do think all the tectonic plates in TV are moving at the moment. And I think the BBC, and actually, well, good credit to him, Matt Britton is actually saying a version of it needs reforming. I have Horace here, Mr. Littlewood, an excellent commentator, but never knew he was a Doctor Who fan. He's not a big one though. He's just said he won't get his CBeebies and watch the Doctor Who there. So I'm sorry, he's not a purist.
I don't consume Big Finish either.
No, I don't actually. I haven't got the money, really. Can't be bothered. So yes, there's all that going on in the TV world now. But talking about cancellation, you were mentioning to me. I mean, this is. In today's show, everybody, you're going to see his levels of geekdom on Doctor Who. We've got cliffhangers, if he was a showrunner, what he collected. So we go back to 1989, that lovely shot of Sylvester McCoy and Ace wandering off into the bushes. Hopefully it's not Hampstead Heath or something. But basically, and basically that reminded you basically of the license fee, and you had to have an idea about 1989.
Yeah. So look, It was basically cancelled because, well, there were a range of reasons, right? But ultimately, Michael Gray didn't like it. He never liked Doctor Who. He didn't like Doctor Who when it was good. And in my view, the end of season 26 was paid the price for season 24 being crap, right? So season 24 was so bad. And just before we came on live, sorry, I probably shouldn't go behind the curtain, Brendan, but I was saying, I think that for any, well, maybe not for any TV show, but for an adaptable television show like Doctor Who, it needs reboots continually. And although we think of 2005 as a reboot that kind of worked for a while, and the attempted reboot of 1996, the classic series had several efforts to revive it, right? John Pertwee, well, Patrick Troughton coming in Power of the Daleks. My God, we're going to try and keep this series going with a completely new actor. I mean, what a completely mad, wacky, but brilliant idea. It wasn't doing so well by the end of Troughton's run. So, right, let's reboot this. Let's make it a bit more like an ITC action adventure kind of series with John Pertwee set on Earth and a whole bunch of kind of army guys like UNIT around him. That worked. Tom Baker works. Peter Davison was basically a reboot as well after a long period of Tom Baker, and they moved it to Monday and Tuesday nights. So a scheduling, I mean, unprecedented reboot. And when it goes wrong, really under Colin Baker, who I didn't mind as the Doctor, but again, the top floor of the BBC didn't take to him. They sort of, the last chance was to get it completely right with Sylvester McCoy. And no fault of Sylvester's, you know, it was a shambles, the position that the production office was in, but season 24 was therefore a complete mess. The Cartmel master plan never gets off the ground, and it's killed off. But here is my contention. If BBC had been a commercial organisation, they would have immediately rebooted it again. They might have said, look, actually, this sort of Sylvester guy, we don't think it's working so much. He's had 3 seasons. Let's bring in an 8th Doctor. But the money it generates is high, right? It still had a relatively... How many people were watching the McCoy era? 4 million, something like that? 5 million? Those sort of numbers? Yeah. I mean, why would you cancel a show that has that? And the commercial side of everybody buying the VHSs, the Doctor Who annuals, the whatever else, all of the stuff around it. Even if that period of time was not peak Doctor Who in terms of people rushing to Forbidden Planet and buying all the merch, it was still a going property. A commercial organisation would not have killed the series in 1989. It would have persisted with it. Perhaps giving some, you know, perhaps allowing the Cartmel master plan to come to fruition. Let's give Andrew Cartmel, John Nathan Turner, Sylvester McCoy, and Sophie Aldred another couple of years, quite like the last one, or it would have refreshed it again. The idea, it would have taken a series that popular off air for 7 years before getting an American, you know, doing an American version of it is nuts. You would never do that if you were commercial. So my contention is that it's the BBC funding model and structure, the fact that they don't have to be reactive to key market mechanisms like who's buying stuff associated with this show. Michael Gray would never have dared cancel it. It would have continued in some form rather than being rested for 7 years.
My one fear with the commercial element and the commercial motive, of course, is I do wonder if in that, especially in that first 26-year run of Doctor Who, would it have been, if it hadn't been protected by the public purse, when it had those peaks and troughs, if you're thinking commercially, would Doctor Who have been dropped? And so my slight concern on the commercial front is, well, there's a different point, Mark, as well. I'm concerned that if we're thinking just commercially, they'll give us any Doctor Who dross. In other words, Doctor Who will be diluted. They'll just keep throwing any old spin-offs. You know, let's just throw rubbish spin-off. Did you enjoy the Sea Devil Homer Aqua rubbish?
Terrible, yeah.
And so, but it's content, and commercially, therefore, you are utilizing the Doctor Who IP, but it's not Doctor Who. So I worry about that commercial element maybe destroying Doctor Who.
Yeah, but then you would hope that the case would be this, wouldn't you, Brendan? That the role of the BBC would be to be the cultural guardian. So if you look at, now maybe I'm putting a bit too much emphasis on all the merch and not spin-off television, but, you know, spin-off product, right? So yeah, we want 5 million people to watch this, but we also want to sell 1 million action figures by the end of next week, and we want, you know, the number of subscriptions to Doctor Who magazine to go up. I would like the BBC's role. I mean, in an ideal world, this is not the world we live in, Brendan, but is the kind of cultural guardian of it. So in my ideal BBC, the BBC would said, look, we're quite happy to license this out for somebody else to produce it, to be creatively about it, but it's got to stick to these guardrails, right? The Doctor is broadly an asexual character. I would have stuck to. We're pretty insistent that you can't, reinvent the Daleks. That William Hartnell is the first Doctor. And it's a bit like how they got stricter, in my view, rightly, on merchandising rights. Okay, I quite like the quirkiness of the TV comics and everything, but it's bananas. It's not Doctor Who, right? They just allowed them to use the Doctor Who characters and produce a completely different genre of science fiction. And similarly, Dalek Mania of the 1960s. These toys don't look sufficiently like Daleks to my mind. I mean, okay, I'd get my hands on them if I could afford them easily, and if the missus didn't go mental. But of me wasting enough money on my hobbies already. But what you need is somebody to be the guardian of it, who's not necessarily the producer of it. Isn't making the action toys themselves, isn't deciding what the next great Dalek or Cybermen story could be, but is loyal to the legacy of it, the canon of it, and insists that it needs to be run through them and ticked off, whether you're making an action figure, producing a spin-off book, producing a spin-off series. So somewhere you need a kind of JNT style character who gets it. I know he had a million flaws as well. You need that person. And at that point, I'm content with commercialism, because you say, Brendan, about the land between the water and the sea. They just want content. But was that a commercial success? Are there people looking back on that saying, that was great, I'm really glad we did that? Okay, it didn't really get very many good reviews, but that was well worth the money spent on it. I don't think people are saying that. I don't think Disney were saying that. I don't think the BBC were saying that. If they are, they're deluded. And in a more market-orientated system, it doesn't mean people make the right decisions, but it does mean the wrong decisions are punished fast, and you can pivot to a new way of doing it. So I would say you want to commercialize it whilst having someone who is the torch holder of the legacy of Doctor Who, making sure that we don't have trans Daleks as being the main enemy from the planet God knows what. You need that protection in place, in the same way that that many valuable intellectual properties are protected. But at that point, licensing out the actual production should not of itself be seen as any more complicated than licensing out the production of the action figure line. Where you have to go back and show that it's loyal to the brand. It's not, and oddly enough, on the sort of BBC merchandising, BBC Worldwide, or BBC Enterprises as it was called back in the day, they got better and better at that. I know everybody thinks that the Dennis Fisher Tom Baker figure looks like, was it Gareth Hunt from the Avengers more than it looks like Tom Baker. The Louis Marx Daleks, somebody's just said in the chat, only pass a passing resemblance to the character options Daleks or some of the figures produced. These are incredibly loyal. So if you can protect the brand in those kind of very practical ways, have you got John Pertwee's nose right in an action figure? I can't see why you can't protect with someone who is, aware of the show, its history, its legacy, what it's about, to say, actually, no, you can't do a script about transgender Daleks. It's just not what the show is about. So scratch that one. But this one with the Cybermen invading whatever is absolutely fine. So come one, come all. I don't think the BBC have a monopoly on getting Doctor Who right, but neither do I think they've got a monopoly on getting it wrong. They just need to guard the legacy of it. I think somebody else in the chat said you need a kind of BBC heritage thing, just to make sure that you protect the nature of the show, that it doesn't completely go off the rails. They haven't done that well, but I'm wishing that into existence, at which point I'm happy in principle for the production of it to be contracted out.
Ever the optimist. Sci-fi fans are optimists. Now, you see the undergrowth there. You see all that. Did it ring any bells for you, Mark, by any chance?
What, the last episode of Survival?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the undergrowth and the wildness, I'll just remind you of this.
Why are we hiding in the long grass? Didn't Gran say that this got you arrested last time?
Nothing was proven. I'm only tagged.
Oh, hurry up. My hay fever is playing up. Achoo!
We are here to spy on the enemy, to surveil the opposition, to grab some advantage over our challenger, to ensure we will always win at all costs.
Oh, you mean cheat?
Wash your mouth out. Winner takes all. Isn't that what the Guardian said?
Oh, that's a great newspaper.
Not that left-wing rag. The Right Guardian. You don't know your who, do you? let me enlighten you. We are here to check on tactics, to check on the coaching and the skills of the opposition.
Oh, is that why you watch so much women's football upstairs, Grandad?
What position on the field?
Not sure.
Remember, son, the key is not to get caught. Your gran catches me every time.
Yeah, and we caught Southampton. This is me teasing. Mark Littlewood is a Saints fan, and I'm a Middlesbrough fan. Never the twain shall meet. Normally, you get your binoculars out at this point.
Yeah, I see you, Brendan. I see you. Yeah. Hiding in the undergrowth to spy on the opposition. Yeah, my football team was found caught red-handed on that. I still think the punishment was too harsh. I think it was like giving capital punishment for shoplifting, but we've had to soak up our punishment. Fortunately, it wasn't quite as bad as capital punishment. We still exist and go again next season to face your Borough team, Brendan, and that will be a grudge match. I think we've learned the hard way that hiding in the undergrowth to try and get a little bit of snippet of information about the opposition is not a wise thing to do. The punishment didn't fit the crime, but it was a crime.
No, but it was also criminal. I have to say that James Corden, Matt Smith episode of the doctor playing football and caretaking and being a lodger, I really didn't give a damn. Domesticated Doctor Who is not for me.
Yeah, I think that's right. Am I right? Matt Smith was a pretty good footballer back in the day, wasn't it? Didn't he have trials with Leicester or something? I can't remember. But he was a pretty good footballer. No, I sort of agree with that. However, contrary to that, Human Nature and the Family of Blood works brilliantly as the Doctor, as a public school teacher, right? It's suddenly, you what the hell's going on here? The viewer's thinking he's in a completely different sort of setting. But I think Human Nature and Family of Blood doesn't get away with it. I mean, it's one of the very, very best stories of the new era. But there's an explanation given as to why the Doctor is not completely himself. Whereas that one with James Corden, it's just sort of, well, that's what the Doctor would do. He'd just hang out like this. So I agree with you that if you find the Doctor in a mundane situation, apparently not himself, there needs to be a science fiction reason for it. Not just that the Doctor's hanging out and fancies a game of footy.
No, and he's babysitting the kids from next door and all that stuff just for a bit of extra money. So we've established Mark's a Saints fan, but he's here to be a Doctor Who fan. And so we are finding out as we go through this, his likes and dislikes. Now, my TV producer mate, The Source, he got a rollicking when he said he found Peter Davison dull. So this is going to be interesting, and I'm going to give my tuppenny worth. So everybody, just to see, Mark suggested this as one of his cliffhangers if he did a cliffhanger show. So let's just have a look at it first, and we'll have a little chat afterwards.
We want to get outside.
Well, we'll just have to hope, won't we? Which is the quickest way out of here?
I don't remember this.
Never mind, come on.
Beg you, Doctor, reconsider this hasty departure.
For reason.
Out, sir, if you insist.
Thank you.
That wretched square again.
This could be serious.
What is the occasion of this haste?
It's affecting him some very complex spatial disturbance. What is it, Doctor?
Castrovalva, folding in on itself deliberately.
Come on, we must get him back in the zero cabinet immediately. Zero cabinet? It's gone.
Recursive occlusion. Someone's manipulating Castrovalva. We're caught in a space-time trap.
Ooh. So, Castrovalva, it's not the first one I put on my list, Mark.
No, let me tell you why I think that is a brilliant cliffhanger. I'm quite a fan of Castrovalva. It's not one of my all-time greats, but I think it's one of the underrated stories, Davison's debut. But the reason I love that cliffhanger is, and I can't remember which particular Doctor Who text, it might have been the About Time series I was reading that explains this. The cliffhangers in Doctor Who aren't literal cliffhangers. I mean, other than the ending of episode 1 of Dragonfire, which is completely ridiculous. So most people think that the cliffhanger should be, oh my God, it looks like the Doctor and his companions are in mortal danger. Are they going to escape next week? Those cliffhangers never work because you know damn well they're going to escape next week, right? It's, the classic Dalek cliffhanger of, right, the Doctor and the companions are there, a Dalek arrives and says exterminate, you get the sting and the music goes up. Well, you know the Dalek isn't going to exterminate them. the best cliffhangers. And in reflection, perhaps I should have included this in my list. I'm thinking of episode 1 of the Carnival of Monsters, but the recursive occlusion one is, it makes you think, oh my God, what is going on here? I need to tune in next week to understand. So it's not about putting the Doctor in extreme peril. You know the Doctor's going to escape, that someone will intervene at the last minute and say, no, don't shoot him yet. You know, we haven't interrogated him enough, or some such like. He's more, you know, he's of more value to us alive, all of that sort. You know that's going to happen. But the reason I love that Castrovalva Part 3 one is, oh my God, what is happening here? It completely changes your perspective on the nature of the story and the dilemma and the threat and the jeopardy that the Doctor is in. And those, in my view, tend to be the best cliffhangers, that they change your expectations about what you've been watching over the previous 25 minutes. And you therefore know that you're in a completely different sort of setup when next week's episodes begin. Whereas just having a bloke with a gun pointing at the Doctor and saying, I'm going to kill you now, that's not a cliffhanger at all. So big shout out to that. It was based on a sort of Escher painting, wasn't it, by Christopher Bidmead, I think. Absolutely brilliant. And I just remember being fascinated by that one. So in my view, really, really good cliffhangers pose questions or give a revelation about something that makes you think, oh my God, what an enigma, what a puzzle. I've got to tune in next week. They're about enigma and revelation more than they're about the imperilment of our cast.
Now, I get the Castrovalva Part 3 that you chose because of what you just said. For me, Castrovalva Part 1, and I don't know if it's that you know, you're a kid and you're a geek at school and all the rest of it, so you were fascinated by that. The Big Bang, the hydrogen inrush, all that in the TARDIS, the Zero Room, we're going to have to eject part of the TARDIS, that sort of thing, that fired my juice. That really got my adrenaline going. That's scientific. Christopher H. Bidmead was good on that. He was on the nose with this stuff, wasn't it? I quite enjoyed that element of Castrovalva, and I got a bit bored once we got to Castrovalva.
Oh wow! Well, I was completely the opposite, actually. I mean, and again, look, I'm all for the Hydra and Inrush. It's Event 1, all of that sort of stuff. But you didn't literally believe that by them having to destroy various parts of the TARDIS, that the console room would be included and that Tegan and Nyssa would die, right? You know in advance that's not going to happen. So I mean, Castrovalva is basically two-part stories, isn't it?
Yeah,
really.
Yeah.
Quite a good introduction for the Doctor, in my view. I mean, Davison is just fantastic in my view. And I loved the way that it was kind of art imitating life, because how do you step into the shoes of Tom Baker? So the bewilderment of the Fifth Doctor and his confusion, he's probably, his frailty in some ways, his lack of self-confidence, to my mind, was a perfect analogy or allegory of what Peter Davison himself must have been going through, replacing what I guess most people of our era would consider the definitive Doctor after so long. So I will defend virtually everything in the Davison era, even including Time Flight
and The Awakening.
And the Awakening. The Awakening's not bad at all, is it? What's wrong with The Awakening? I mean, it's middle of the road stuff, but perfectly good comfort Doctor Who, isn't it?
Yeah. What was the challenge for you as a kid here? Like you said, Tom Baker's so strong, so mighty, so established. I suppose for you, when you were born, Tom Baker's the only thing you've ever seen. So basically,
yes, I think that's right. Although I have not a memory, but my parents recounting a story to me, so I have no direct memory of it. So this may have grown in the telling, and I think I only would have been 2 or 3 when Robot was first broadcast, of me complaining that the Doctor had changed and me being very, very confused as a tiny tot, that I wasn't really sure it was Doctor Who or not. But yeah, basically Tom Baker was, therefore when I started getting into it, I've got not quite every issue, but certainly the first 200 or 300 issues of Doctor Who Weekly, Monthly and Doctor Who Magazine. And, that sort of grown up with me in a way. The first issue was with free transfers to scribble on the back when I was 7 and cost 12p out of my pocket money. Now it's a sort of it's for middle-aged geeks like me. But I loved therefore, the first memory I have myself, this was the first, I was obviously conscious. I knew who all the previous Doctors were. I knew what all the stories were. I pored over the 10th anniversary Radio Times special to try and find out everything I could. I read, all the Target books. But for the first time, I was witnessing in my life, in my conscious life, the change of Doctor. And that was so exciting for me that it felt like proof to me that this series would always be with us, because I'd never witnessed a regeneration before, even though I seem to have some scant memory of Pertwee, God knows how. It may have been through pictures and images rather than through actually watching the television. So when Davison arrived, that was proof positive to me that this would be with me, if not forever, for a very, very long stretch. And probably therefore I was also at the age to be sort of target age. When did Davison start? 82, was it?
Yeah.
So I would have been 10 in 82, and I loved it. And I, despite opinion to the contrary, I think it works very well with 2 or 3 companions rather than just one. I know the actors get pissed off that there's not enough for them to do, but so what? The show's not for the actors, it's for the audience. So too bad. And I just think Davison's run was epic. And what was brilliant about it was I was going to say it retained, but I think it actually increased on the popularity of the tail end of Tom Baker, right? Season 19, I think, did better than season 18 in terms of audience viewing figures. Tom Baker, I won't hear a word against him, but it sort of his era peters out a bit, right? The best Tom Baker stuff is in the first half of his reign, not in the second half of his reign, by and large. So this was just great for me, and I loved the way they put it together. I thought they basically had, which sometimes they've gone too far down the rabbit hole, the right balance between new ideas and referring back to the history of the show. There's season 20 where there's a reference back to to previous Doctor Who in all of them, but they didn't overdo it. For 3 of those stories, it's the Black Guardian. For one of them, it's Omega. And I think throughout Davison's era, they were able to pepper in, you've got the 5 Doctors on the screen now, they were able to pepper in things that fans would appreciate without it being the case that you needed 3 PhDs in Doctor Who mythology to work out what the hell was going on. And in my view, seasons 19 to 21 get that absolutely nailed. Perfect balance of fan indulgence, respect for the show's history, using the show's past, coming up with some new ideas as well. Kinder and Snake Dance, both fantastic in my view. So there's a great balance between that and bringing back the Cybermen, whatever, a nod to the show's past, even bringing back Omega. The Arc of Infinity was a far better return for Omega than the last attempt to do that, wasn't it? So they got it. They just got it bang on right, and it just. I was gutted when Davison went. I thought he was absolutely brilliant in the role. I liked that he had a certain nagging self-doubt. I thought his relations with all of his companions was great. I think he's a very, very fine actor, Peter Davison. That the time when I loved Doctor Who the most, even though I've now got more Doctor Who merch and material and books than I can count, was that period, seasons 19 to 21. And I think it is a standout period for the show critically. Okay, yeah, there are a couple of duff shows in there, but even something that makes absolutely no goddamn sense whatsoever, I'm thinking of Resurrection of the Daleks, is still a damned good watch, right? Even though, it's got more holes than plot in it in terms of the story. Love that era. Won't hear a word against it. Davison, my favourite Doctor by a country mile.
I was excited. I'd just gone into secondary school like you. I was getting the Doctor Who Monthly and all the rest of it, and Peter Davison. It was all happening. It was just on the personal front. It's so challenging, isn't it? When you're a kid, Tom Baker's so mighty, so strong, and then suddenly you get, as you say, a more flawed, quieter Peter Davison. I remember at the start, just like you said with Robot, I was struggling with. Well, I struggled for part 1 of Robot, that was it. But with Peter Davison, he was an acquired taste for me because I needed to warm to him. Now, by The Visitation, wow, because that's a great story, The Visitation. Kinder, obviously, I love as an adult more, actually. It's one of those where it's very interesting. Photo Doomsday, well, yeah. whatever.
No, that's another one I'm going to stand up for, Brendan. If I remember, yeah, look, again, I'm not saying it's a stone cold classic, right? But in my view, the Davison era kind of fluctuates between average and absolutely fantastic. And I'd probably put 4 to Doomsday in the kind of 5 or 6 out of 10 category. If I recall, that was actually the first one that they filmed, wasn't it? They didn't want to film Castrovalva first because they wanted to get a sense of Davison as the Doctor. I think 4 to Doomsday's fine. I mean, there's too much weird cultural dancing in it, which goes on a bit too long. I can see Stephen Bellow in the chat has made exactly the same error that was made on issue 61 of Doctor Who magazine, by the way, where they printed his name with the D in it, 2 Ds in it. There's only 1 D. I remember Doctor Who magazine getting that wrong. In Peter Davidson is the Doctor, Peter Davison, of course. So yeah, 4 to Doomsday is fine. You know, there's some slightly stupid stuff in it about the cricket ball and all of that, but it's an okay. I like Persuasion and Enlightenment. That was quite cool when you see them dressed up as kind of 2 very good looking human beings. What's his name? Stratford Johns as Monarch. You know, decent enough. So yeah, look, 4 to Doomsday is nowhere near my top 10, but my kind of contention is virtually all of Davison is in the top 100 stories.
Yeah, no, I suppose there's a consistency that, I mean, I do like that era when I look back, I have to say, and I saw Aurum in the thread saying, why was season 20 so flat? Well, it was the 20th. I remember watching Nationwide. I remember all the programs advertising Lonleat. I remember the hype. Yeah. And of course, they said, you're going to get a monster and a villain from the past. You're going to get the whole damn lot. As it was, and you said the same. We got the Black Guardian for a trilogy. Turlough, this schoolboy, was trying to kill the Doctor, and it just didn't feel right to me. But it had a consistency. And yes, there was a strike and they missed the final Dalek story, didn't they? That was...
that was obviously the disaster, because Resurrection of the Daleks would have been the finale, right? So the finale ends up being the King's Demons, which is, you know, not one of the stronger ones. But I sort of count, I don't know what the accepted wisdom is amongst fandom. I sort of count the 5 Doctors as being part of season 20. And that's terrific. I mean, that's just absolutely brilliant. I mean, mad as a box of frogs, basically, but just great. So that lifts 20. Snake Dance is excellent. Brendan, I'm with you. Kinder, I was like, okay, this is all a bit too weird as a kid, but watching it back, it's exceptional. Kinder came bottom of the Doctor Who magazine survey amongst fans that year. It was not loved at the time, but it's probably been the story that has grown most in fans' affections. I can't really think of any others that have gone from 0 to hero. So yeah, I just think it's just a brilliant run. Not all of my favourite stories are from there, but I said the consistency of it and the standout ones are just superb.
And it was amazing, some of the people. I mean, Kinder now, when I watch it as an adult, I'm thinking, well, you've got Nerys Hughes. I wished she joined the TARDIS.
Yeah, absolutely. That and the relationship between her and Davison is brilliant. Yeah, it's a real shame she's only in for one story. I agree.
Yeah. Richard Tarr, I mean, whoa. Yeah, I mean, and what a part. And yes, and the young lad who ended up being in the Bill and all the rest of it. I mean, phew.
Who was it? Richard Todd that Matthew Waterhouse decided to give acting tips to? Have I got that right? Is that right?
Is that a bit like me saying, Mark, you just need to do this on this channel? You know, I mean, yeah, it's dear God, no, know your place, mate. Yes, although the Who Pets might do their own little thing. Right, should we have another little cliffhanger? You can tell he likes Davison, but no Doctor Who fan would ever challenge this one.
Sergeant Mitchell and her troops are dead, sir.
How many hostiles were there?
2, sir.
Let me know when you find anything.
Anything we can do.
Too many people have died for you to play the fool.
Now where have you gone?
Where have you hidden the bodies?
What bodies?
We didn't do it!
We only just arrived.
The rockfall!
What?
The bodies must be here!
Where's it coming from?
What's that?
These belong to Dr. Khan, my assistant.
Is this why you killed them?
I know nothing about it.
Open the hatch.
I can't.
I said open it.
Androids. That's why they didn't register on your scanners.
Are they yours?
No.
That's them. I recognise that sound.
And attacked you.
Yes.
Do you know why?
No.
Whoever's controlling the androids thinks there is.
Destroy them at once.
You can't argue with that. What I can remember that like it was yesterday. My jaw dropped. Absolutely brilliant. And we will literally see nothing like that ever again, because it would be impossible with modern communications and TV production to keep that under wraps. Oftentimes they didn't bother with the Daleks, by doing things like calling it the planet of the Daleks, death of the Daleks, the day of the Daleks. You kind of know what you're going to get. And then the cliffhanger is a Dalek appears, and you're supposed to be surprised, despite the fact that Daleks are in the title of the story. That was superbly done. I mean, I can just remember being so excited. I had fleeting memories of Revenge of the Cybermen, but it had been, 8 years since the Cybermen have been in the show, I think. Absolutely brilliant. Did not see it coming at all. And again, it's another one which is not a cliffhanger involving peril as such, right? It's not like if that cliffhanger had just been the bomb ticking down to 0, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, he's going to defuse the bomb. It's, my God, next week's episode is going to be completely different to what I was expecting. So props for pulling that off to John Nathan Turner, right? He refused the front page of the Radio Times, I think it's
Yes.
Yep. And they did all sorts of stuff to cover it all up, and to actually allow that to impact you live as you saw it. And as a 10-year-old Doctor Who fan, I mean, what could be better? That 20, 30 seconds at the end of Earthshock 1, I will treasure that memory forever and a day. Absolutely brilliant.
There's not much telly. I mean, you take it wider than Doctor Who. There's not much TV that has a moment like that that's visceral. And I have to say, I had my little tape recorder. I was, audio recording the damn lot. And of course, you're there, Earthshock, as you say, and there's not a clue in sight. You thought that actually the monsters were those cave lycra-clad, androids, and you thought, oh, it's just some rejects from Legs and Co. So that was all you thought it was. So to turn it like that, to pivot it. And I think the other thing that's brilliant about Earthshock, you said about Castrovalva's like 2 and 2. Earthshock, you jump after about 2 episodes to the freighter, don't you?
That's right.
And I love that. There's something about Doctor Who when you jump from one location to another. Invasion of Time Part 4, I think it was, when I got sick of the plastic bags, the Vardens.
And then the Sontarans arrive.
Oh, yeah. Let's have some Sontarans in the swimming pool. There we go.
So, absolute classic. And again, that is a stunt that would have been extremely difficult for John Nathan Turner to pull off at the time. Would now be impossible. But as I say, for all his flaws and missteps, there's a lot to love about JNT, and I owe to his memory forever that extremely fond and exciting childhood memory.
There you go. So let's look at this one, because Doctor Who fans get this. Weetabix. Weetabix. Tell us the story about your Weetabix.
Yeah, well, again, this is, back in the day, there was very, very little Doctor Who merchandise, right? Back in the 70s. So, the weekly comes out in 1979. Then it becomes a monthly after in less than a year, I think. I did have, I think, some Doctor Who Top Trumps. They weren't actually made by the Top Trumps company, but I remember, and they got the Sea Devils and the Ogrons mixed up, I think, if I remember rightly. I've still got a deck of them somewhere. But these were the only things that you could basically collect. So in a packet of Weetabix, you would get, and I think it was it 4? There was a strip of 4 of them, I think, if I remember rightly. Okay, so, and they'd always be the same 4, right? So if you look at the top left there, if you've got the Cyberman, you're also going to get the Ice Warrior, Doctor Who #1, and that Dalek with the pink top. And I was determined to get all of these. So I just ate a crazy amount of Weetabix, which I don't know whether Weetabix is good for you or bad for you, but it was definitely bad for you in the quantities that I was eating it. But we had a packaging problem, and the packaging problem, which would have been something to do with how they had divvied things up regionally, is where I was being brought up at the time in Berkshire. All of them were duplicates. I can't remember which one it was, but every single set was duplicates. So it's obviously because of the way they put the cards in. And right, these 20,000 boxes of Weetabix are going to Berkshire, and all of them had only one card. So my father, who's a mathematician, wrote a letter of complaint to Weetabix, or the holding company, saying, we've now gone through 26 boxes of Weetabix. We're getting the same Doctor Who cards in each one. The chances of this statistically are 1 in 100 trillion or something. It's not really acceptable. And then Weetabix replied, apologizing, and sent me the full set. Yeah, they sent me the full set once my father had mathematically proven that we shouldn't have had anything like this number of duplicates. And in 1975, so I think that would have been when the first set came out, I think, if I've got my years right. So I had them all, and they were proudly sitting along the window on the windowsill in our utility room. But in 1975, we moved to the USA for 2 years. My father was posted there with British Airways, and so off we went. So I missed quite a bit of Doctor Who, other than coming back for Christmas and stuff. And when we returned home to the very same house, which we had not sold, we just rented it out for 2 years. The first thing I did age 5 in 1977 was to run to the windowsill in the utility room and then have a screaming fit that my Doctor Who Weetabix cards were not there. I could not believe it. And my parents, obviously assumed I would have forgotten about them. Little did they know me. So I'm still thinking at some point whether to put the Wonga on the table to actually buy the original set. But I mean, they're quite valuable entities now, aren't they? And of course, you could cut out the back of the box, which was some sort of game you could play then with the cardboard cutouts. So you could have these scenes and everything. And I think in the second series, it was a game that you could play with dice or some such like. Yeah, there you go. So it was like I remember that set as well. I've still got that set completely. But I still hold a grudge against my parents for tossing away Series 1 of the Weetabix cards. And at some point, but they cost a mint. It's not a cheap bit of merch to get. But Brendan, back in the day, in the 70s, other than the annuals that I always bought, the World Distributors annuals, what you're showing on screen now, that was basically it for Doctor Who merchandise in 1975, 1976, right?
And it was great fun. I remember being in primary school, and we were allowed to take in the cardboard cutouts, and we were swapping these figures. I remember to get the Tom Baker and to get one of the Cybermen. I remember fighting for the Sea Devil, because Sea Devils is my launch pad into Doctor Who.
Right.
And so, because yes, you're right. There's no video. There's no nothing. I was still too young to be reading lots of Target books. So basically, this was my Doctor Who.
Yeah.
I bet you. Were you the same with Asterix on Weetabix?
I can't remember Asterix. Were they cards as well? Were they?
Yeah.
Right.
You could do all the. So yeah, they were very, very successfwe They knew what they were doing. But of course.
Yeah, issue 1 and issue 4 there, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Now, you said when we were preparing for today, you said, I don't think I've got number 1. I remember seeing it in the newsagents. I was 11 and I was coming back from secondary school, about to catch the bus, and I had no money on me. I'd spent my lunch, and all of a sudden you're going, whoa. And I didn't know it was out. I didn't know it existed.
Right.
And so you're one of the lucky ones who actually managed to get it. And you've got this. I think you said you had the set, didn't you?
Yeah, I stopped buying in the wilderness years, but I've got everything running up to about 1990, the whole lot. I've sent you a photo of some of my geeky stuff in my living room. But yeah, it was an issue 1. I got a little bit lucky that it was a friend of mine who lived down the road, who was about the same age as me, a year older than me, if I recall. And he was a Doctor Who nut as well. He had the whole run of Target books and would get the next one as soon as it came out. And he said they're releasing a Doctor Who comic, and it was sort of a Doctor Who comic, right? It was mainly comic strip based and aimed at the. I think Des Skin was the head of Marvel at the time, and he reckoned there was a market for it. And my God, was he right? So it was aimed at kids basically. There was stuff in there about previous Doctors. That first issue included a file index thing you could cut out of William Hartnell. Then they did Trout, and then they moved on to the companions. I think the first issue was about the creation of Doctor Who as a series, and then in each issue they started going through them chronologically from An Unearthly Child or if you're a real pedant, from 100,000 BC or whatever you want to call that first story, onto the Daleks and all of the rest of it. And I loved it. And yeah, so I bought it. I can't quite remember the finances of what my pocket money was at the time, but I think I was allowed 2 comic books a week, and I just needed to tell my dad which those 2 were, and then he would pick them up from Wokingham railway station along with his newspaper, and I'd get it when he came home. So yeah, treasure those memories. I haven't got the first issue in mint condition, but I have got it. And I did, as you can see on the one you got on the screen there, I did use the transfers. So they're on the inside back cover or whatever. And I stuck with it, did not miss a single issue until 1990. So I've got at least the first decade or more of the run. And I picked it up again in 2005 and I've got all of the issues from Eccleston forward. I still haven't cancelled my subscription.
Yeah, I have now, but I tend to buy every month. So it makes no difference. But when we got to the monthlies, issue 50, etc., and we started going through, I found it hard. I had a haversack, school haversack, you know, your PE kit. You just, and I needed these flat. I needed these protected. And I remember the struggles to get from school on the bus, your PE kit, all your books, your homework, and making sure you didn't knack it. Now, I don't know about you, but there's certain covers that they do something for me. That Peter Davison one,
with the misspelling of his surname, Peter Davidson is the Doctor. You can see it there. And is that issue 50? Which is no, it's not issue 50. It's issue 56 and 61. Is that number 61 is the first Davison one, and that's number 56. Yeah, some of the covers I can remember. Issue 50 was some sort of celebratory issue as well, where there was a pull-out magazine that had the 4 Doctors on it and listed every story from Unearthly Child to Logopolis. And I can remember, I mean, I'm still fascinated by this, Brendan, because I'm such a geek about the whole thing. I'm still fascinated about the controversy about what certain stories are called, right? So it's kind of controversial in the Hartnell area when each episode was had a separate name. But I can remember from the day I poured over the 10th anniversary special, which I didn't have, my friend down the road did. But in that anniversary special, the 10th anniversary special Radio Times edition of 1973, they list all the stories in order, but they didn't know what the correct name of the story was. So for each story, they just give you the title of episode 1. So they listed Dalek Invasion of Earth, for example, as World's End, right?
Yes.
And it's only by the time you get to, is it the Savages, where they actually have, they give an overarching title to the whole story and then have episodes 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4. So I love that. I was still on the hunt for it. And the Target series, by the way, didn't much help because they would often change the title of the story as well, right? So Moonbase is Doctor Who and the Cybermen. Spearhead from Space is Doctor Who and the Auton Invasion. The Silurians is Doctor Who and the Cave Monsters. That's a really odd one, actually. Doctor Who and the Silurians. That's the official title of that story. Just because someone somewhere didn't realize you were supposed to cut out the Doctor Who and part from it. So it's the only story with Doctor Who actually in the official title. Crazy stuff, but everybody's got to have a hobby.
Well, what about let's do a curveball now. If you've established yourself as a Doctor Who fan, he provided photographs of his lounge. You can see your setup. That's Target books on the top. I can see especially.
Then the next one's quite modern Doctor Who books. The previous image, but the shelf down, Brendan. Yeah. So if the top shelf there is Target books. The second shelf is all stuff that's been written generally quite recently, although I think you can see Peter Hannings, is it? Who a celebration on the right-hand side, but the About Time stuff. And then the third shelf, but particularly the fourth shelf, if you look at the fourth shelf where you can just see those comic books, those magazines stacked up, that's issue 1 of Doctor Who Weekly right the way through to something like issue, I don't know, 150 or something. And then on the shelf above it, is the kind of modern run of Doctor Who magazines. So all of that's Doctor Who. That's the bit part series, Part Works series that they did, which was basically I think more or less based on Doctor Who magazine's, big in-depth of each and every story. So it's the story breakdown. It's also all the production details. My camera wasn't quite wide enough to get William Hartnell in, but that runs the way through from Hartnell to the end of Capaldi, and that is the DVD collection, which is complete. I think I don't think I'm missing anything from that. Obviously in broadcast order. But it's the stuff in the stuff in the grey that I love a bit more than the new series, which is at the bottom.
So now we're going to throw a curveball at Mark, because we're going to ask him. So, if you were the showrunner, I'm going to throw a few quickies at you, okay? And just get your instinct as a Doctor Who fan. So, of course, this is where you said you probably started as a Doctor Who fan, according to your parents.
Robot.
Yeah. So, here's the question straight away. Right. You're the showrunner. Is it a hard reboot, a soft reboot, or do we just continue on with the linear effect of Doctor Who?
Yeah, I'm not trying to dodge the question here, but you might have to help me on some definitions. Okay. So what I want to happen is what they did in 2005. And I don't know whether you would count that as continue, soft reboot, or hard reboot. So I would start with a new Doctor.
Yeah.
If you've never heard of Doctor Who before, you can start watching from episode 1 of the 16th Doctor. And you will be introduced to the TARDIS as if you have not seen it before. And the 16th Doctor goes about his business and has adventures in time and space. As the series begins to develop, I would make references back to previous Doctors, but I would assume a knowledge base of my audience of 0. If you've never heard of it and you switch on for the first episode of Doctor 16, it will make sense to you. And we will start references back. So it's basically the same, however you would describe what they did in 2005 is what I would do in 2030. Completely unlike the TV movie, which is completely confusing to someone who doesn't know Doctor Who. It starts with Sylvester McCoy, apparently our hero, who then dies after 25 minutes, and the main man doesn't come in. That was a continue, I guess you would call that, the Doctor Who movie. No, so I wouldn't do continue. I would assume, just as they cleverly did with Eccleston, that there has been a passage of time has passed. So you don't even need to explain the Billy Piper nonsense, right? You just start with the 16th Doctor, knowing that there are probably a range of adventures between whatever the hell happened with Billy Piper and what we are now seeing today. So does that count as soft reboot, Brendan? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, hard reboot is hard reboot.
Go back to Doctor 1 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, because hard reboot is starting to get higher in my head, because they've thrown such a horrible decade at us, personally speaking, that I'm starting to think, look, I don't want a continuation. People are arguing about Timeless Children and all the rest of it. So basically, I'm thinking, do we just do like a new Miss Marple, a new Tarzan? We know they're just completely different. But it seems every time I mention that the thread kick off, and a lot of Doctor Who fans say, no, they in the end are like the linear effect. The trouble is they want their cake and eat it, because as soon as people say they want the linear effect, they say, but I don't want the Timeless Children. Some say they don't want the Jodie Doctor. And all of a sudden they're saying, but we're changing the rules.
Yeah, I don't think that you can knock out Whittaker and Gatwa. I don't think you can knock them out. So I think that you can continue and ignore. Right now, it is a problem for the continuity. And what I'd like to see is not in episode 1 resolving the whole what the hell was Billy Piper doing on the threshold of the TARDIS. At some point, I'd like them to retro fix the Timeless Children. But you don't need to do that in episode 1. You don't even need to do that in series 1. At some point, you just need a throwaway line along the lines of, as you know, the master always lies. He's lied about my past.
Yeah.
He told things that were not true about my past, and he's doing it again. And that one sentence allows those of us who hate the idea that William Hartnell was not the first Doctor, absolutely an aberration, just shocking that they did that. That allows a reboot of that. But what was so clever about what Russell T Davies did when they brought it back was there was quite a lot of fan service. but if it flew over your head, it didn't matter, right? So I was picking up kind of Easter eggs that say my mum and dad wouldn't have a clue what was being referenced, but it wasn't necessary to their enjoyment of the show. So you need to put in that, insofar as you fix the continuity or the fan service, do it very subtly with a throwaway line here or a throwaway line there. I love, for example, on this, I don't know why it was ever an issue about this whole issue of does Paul McGann count, right? And then you see in the Doctor's notebook in Family of Blood and Human Nature that the McGann Doctor is just penciled in, right? And if you missed that because you're just a casual viewer who quite likes watching Doctor Who, it didn't matter. But if you got it, it was a nod that McGann clearly counts. I mean, there was also, I think, some speculation. It wasn't completely clear that, well, and then they had to change it, obviously, with John Hurt, but it wasn't completely clear that Eccleston was the 9th Doctor, was it? I mean, if you just watch Rose, he could have been the 13th Doctor.
Yeah. I do like the idea that we just in the future see a new Doctor in the TARDIS in some peril. We don't know what, and I think in future don't tell us the number, because I'm also concerned, Mark, that we're going to get to Doctor 27 and it's going to really dilute the effect. It's just going to sound a bit dodgy. He's just the Doctor.
Yeah, fair. I mean, I do think that you need to. I mean, one of the things that went wrong prior to the Whittaker and Gatwa stuff, which is, you know, more or less unwatchable slop, with one or two highlights that I'd grant them, but is pretty terrible. But I think what went wrong, and you get this at the tail end of the John Nathan Turner era, and you do get it under Moffat as well, was by the time you're ploughing through the tail end of Matt Smith or Peter Capaldi, you needed a PhD in Doctor Who mythology to work out what on earth was happening. And so you're baking in a dwindling audience. You've got to keep it simple. And I know there's a temptation to do that because effectively 2005, we're more or less starting again. But so it becomes more and more complicated. But I was losing track of whose daughter, who's the Doctor supposed to be? Is the Doctor married or not married? What the hell is going on here? And you know, there are very few people I bow to in terms of my Doctor Who knowledge. Expect the normies to completely switch off at that point. Same things happened in comic books. You know, comic books used to be pretty straightforward. You could pick up issue 217 of the Uncanny X-Men and you could follow it, even if it was part 2 of an arc of a story. Now, there's, you know, a million alternative universes and you don't know what version of Wolverine or the Black Widow that you're looking at. So keep it simple. Start with a new Doctor. If you want, as the new series continues throughout the 2030s, put some references back to things, but make sure they are not the foundations of the show, that they are throwaway retrofixes of the Timeless Children if you want to do that. But it needs to be done with a very, very, very light touch. The idea that people watching it know exactly what happened in the 10th Planet episode 4 is a road to total ruin. And although I love that story, it just went down the kind of, you know, over fan service, put it that way.
Now, this is just a tester. You're the showrunner. You you've made your pitch. So I'm just asking, what would your Doctor be like? Now, this one I need to say, is he asexual? I said he, I might be bollocked for that. Asexual, is he gender fluid? Because I'm intrigued, Mark, when this invitation tender comes out, because the language is going to give it away. But what would your preference be?
White, Caucasian, so Caucasian, English, eccentric, middle-aged man. I'll stretch middle age a bit, somewhere between the ages of 40 and 60. Largely, asexual, basically. No, I think you can have a very soft, platonic, romantic relationships. I mean, you even get a tiny sniff of that with William Hartnell in the Aztecs, right? But no further than that. So the sexuality of Doctors 1 to 7. So basically asexual, and no recognition, therefore, of aesthetic sexual beauty. The line that everybody needs to see is the Tom Baker line from City of Death: "You are a very beautiful woman, probably." That is exactly that hits it absolutely on the head. No romantic relationship with the companions. Do you know they got in some difficulty about that, the BBC, with Sarah Sutton and Janet Fielding? Do you know that story?
Go on. What's that?
So because Davison was a much younger Doctor and, reasonably handsome fellow, the BBC started receiving letters saying, is he having it off with Tegan or Nissa? and they didn't really want this. And that's the reason they put in the girls' bedrooms in some of the episodes, showing that Nissa and Tegan share a bedroom and have twin beds, in order to just deflect that there was any romantic or sexual relationship with the Fifth Doctor.
And a very long corridor, a very long TARDIS corridor.
Exactly right. So that's where I'd pitch it, basically. So
well, you've already answered this one, really. Like, how would you deal with the inheritance of the show, timeless children? As in, every Doctor Who fan has their issues about what you ignore and what you do. You've mentioned timeless children can be done. Is there any other issue you've got with the whole history of 63 years that probably still needs dealing with, or just for John?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I mean, obviously it's the timeless children that stands out like a sore thumb, isn't it? I would quite like tidied up, exactly who are the various iterations of the Doctor in order. I think we've now decided that, I mean, the War Doctor counts, but isn't numbered, is that right? So John Hurt counts, but so he's Doctor 8.5, I guess, right? And the Fugitive Doctor, I mean, it's all a bit odd, right? So I would like some way of including, I would still keep Whittaker and Gatwa in, and possibly John Hurt, but I hate and the Fugitive Doctor. All of this is a bit strange. So I'd like to get back to, there are Doctors that are numbered that you can count if you wish to. I think I'm with you, Brendan, that I don't want it to be claimed. I don't need the Doctor going around saying, I'm now in my 23rd regeneration. It doesn't need to be said on screen, but I think I want a Doctor Who book, an editor of a Doctor Who book aimed at new fans, to be absolutely clear who he would have to list in order to say, here are all the Doctors, right? Yeah. And this abomination would not be included, right? so I'm absolutely adamant it starts with William Hartnell. You've got these slight kind of, the boxes on the side about the Fugitive Doctor and the War Doctor or whatever. McGann definitely counts. I guess John Hurt counts. Fugitive Doctor, I'm not so sure about. I'd like that tidied up, but it doesn't, again, I want a light touch on the show. So as far as the show's inheritance is concerned, I want the people running the show to understand it, know it, and respect it. But I don't need a single viewer to know any of it. I want the order to be that all new viewers can start here and will not be confused by what we're about to put on screen. The Doctor Who movie completely failed to do that at all. You would have no clue what's going on if that was the first Doctor Who show you'd ever watched. Rose did it brilliantly. So follow the pattern that worked, and that is basically the blueprint of 2005. Obviously, you bring back a good number of the old baddies, the old monsters, all of the rest of it. I don't think too much of it needs fixing. Look, the continuity is a mess. I love all of these arguments about what is canon and all of this sort of stuff. But, I've got into endless arguments about whether you count the Cybermen as coming from Telos or Mondas. But whatever you do, don't make a story like Attack of the Cybermen to try and resolve these issues, right? Nobody cares, right? It might be in your Bible somewhere about how you would brief someone who wants to do an introduction to Doctor Who book, but don't put it on the screen. Earthbound or Outer Space, both for sure, and probably in about equal measure, about 50-50, I think should be Earthbound, and about 50% Outer Space. That would be about my split there. Don't see any reason to pick only one lane. Tone, style, and format.
So this is just would you still think episodic? Because I'm aggrieved at these 45-minute wham bam thank you ma'am episodes with a quick reset at the end. I personally think, I watch Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and all the rest of it, and they still have cliffhangers. Line of Duty has cliffhangers. Traitors has cliffhangers. So cliffhangers for me is a must. And then on top of that, you can binge watch if you want. Also, you can have a lovely serialized thing, but it also gives us the space to have those lovely Jago and Lightfoot type characters that don't seem to be in the new series.
Yeah, that's very fair. So yeah, I'm old school here. I must admit, something I don't have an answer to is why the format, not just of this show, why did the general format of this type of drama move from 25 minutes to 45 minutes? I don't know why that was the case. I mean, it's not peculiar to Doctor Who, right? It's true across all television. 25-minute episodes just don't exist anymore. I agree with you on cliffhangers. I think, right, in terms of tone and style, I would try and channel a mix of Eccleston and Davison, I think. The tone and style should be something like the Fifth Doctor and the Ninth Doctor. In terms of tone and style, and I mix those two together because I think Eccleston was a little bit too dark. I think it was a great 13 episodes, but a bit too dark. So I'm sprinkling in some of my favourite Doctor, Peter Davison, to make it a little bit lighter. Format. I see no reason why you can't end on a cliffhanger, even if you have, ended the story. So what I'd lean on there, I think, not that they do this with the cliffhangers, but let's imagine it's a run of 13 episodes each season, each series. I would have a thread throughout, a bit like the Key to Time season. So there are distinct stories within it, like there were in the Key to Time. But so the Doctor's, hunting down some MacGuffin or other, and that's all in the background of the story, which leads to a climax of him obviously completing whatever overarching mission he's got. But within the Key to Time thing, you can have a whole range of different stories and different settings. But I would like, even if the story is over, I would almost start the next story with the last 90 seconds of, so the last 90 seconds of story 1 should be the first 90 seconds of story 2, so that you have the TARDIS crash landing somewhere, or it arrives on somewhere that looks extremely mysterious. Think of the cliffhanger at the end of the very first episode, right? Because you could break that down into the first episode, and then the next 3 are the Tribe of Gum. I think that the shadow approaching the TARDIS at the end of the very first episode is great. I'd like to see that at the end of the story. They did this quite a bit in Hartnell, right? So
yeah.
So was it the end of the Daleks ends on a cliffhanger, doesn't it? Leading into the Edge of Destruction.
Yeah.
So you can put those cliffhangers in, even if you've got a one and done episode thing. So I think that's how I'd go. 13 episodes, some sort of like common thread linking them together. He's on the search for this. He's got to complete that. That's how I'd piece it together. So I'm basically relying on the whole 2005 reboot. I think they got that pretty much bang on right. You might have a couple of double episode series where you can have a full-blown cliffhanger, but I'm relying on that 2005 format, basically.
Okay. Any variation of the soft reboot theory won't work, says Real Geriatric. The show is too damaged. My main theory is that the Beeb don't actually realise how badly damaged the show is. From Matt, the bits I'm getting, they certainly don't. Right, let's just touch on this then, because this is all for Mark. He's a Doctor Who fan. Forget everything else. For the moment, this is all that counts. So, likes his Peter Davison. We noticed that. So let's just go down this road for a second. I tell you what, sometimes when you talk about the BBC, I do always think of the characters in this cliffhanger. Here we go.
Scott must have had a good day. Morgus said that Spectrox was the most valuable substance. I wonder what it can be. It's going to worry me until I find out what it is.
Seem to be about ready for us.
Morgus, I can't thank you enough. My greatest boon ever bestowed on humanity. Often. That is why this war must be brought to a conclusion.
One honourable way, sir. Shallows Jack must be crushed.
The public want their Spectrox, Morgus.
What is it?
The execution, sir.
The red cloth. In my day, we'd have had filthy little swine like that shot in the back.
Your very last declaration.
We're innocent. We've had no trial.
Fire squad. Take aim.
Fire!
I mean,
brilliant.
So adult, so gritty.
Yeah. I'm actually sort of wondering the extent to which Blake Seven actually had an impact on how they approached Doctor Who after Blake Seven, of which I'm a big fan of. But having said earlier in the show, Brendan, that I don't like these sort of execute them now things. The reason that this is a standout success is they do open fire. So I can remember watching that and thinking the order is going to be given for execution, but you won't see any guns firing, and there'll be a sudden last-minute reprieve at the end of episode 2. Somebody will intervene. You know, Morgus will say, "No, he's more valuable alive." But what's brilliant about it, it fits my own personal definition for what constitutes a great cliffhanger. Is you know the Doctor and Perry are not dead, but you're thinking, how the hell are they going to get out of this? What the hell is the explanation as to how they have survived? So you always know they're going to survive, but how? What? And the explanation is absolutely brilliant, of course, with the androids and all of that sort of stuff. So the Caves of Androzani is, without question, I will broker no compromise here, the best single story of the classic series. And I know polls are taken and people have different opinions, but people who have different opinions are wrong. The Caves of Androzani is just the best. That cliffhanger is fantastic. The third cliffhanger is fantastic. The second cliffhanger with the magma monster or whatever, I think we can gloss over. But the third cliffhanger, when you know really by this stage as a Doctor Who fan that Davison is facing certain death because he's going to be exiting in the next episode. That's brilliant as well. But that isn't just a guy holding a gun at the Doctor, that there'll be an intervention at the start of the next episode. The fact they open fire, again, has your mind whirring. What happens next? We're going to be in a completely different situation come the next episode. So, corker cliffhanger from the best classic story of all time.
Did you at the time? I know you were younger than me. Even me thinking I knew it all. I didn't see that explanation coming. I honestly did not think, when I saw that clever directing, I just thought, oh gosh, this is done differently for Doctor Who. All that, you saw the hand of Sharaz Jek and then the laughing and all the computer screens. I didn't know that he was setting up the androids. So it wowed me so I agree with you on the cliffhanger that it wasn't just that you're going to die and get out of it, because there was something going on under my nose that I hadn't noticed. But what made it, Graham Harper, honestly, when you watched that, didn't you? You thought, gosh, it's different.
Yeah.
It's just so cleverly done. It's so grown up.
It's almost perfect, the whole story. The plot is fantastic and plausible. I love the breaking of the fourth wall stuff as well. That works. I don't know why it works, but it works. The slow descent of Davison to certain death, his sacrifice to save Perry. The only thing that doesn't work is the magma beast or whatever it's called. That's a bit crap. It's not the worst, okay? Sea Warriors of the Deep, but it is that's basically the only downside of it. The rest of it is just absolutely spectacular. The plot is fantastic. It's Davison's best 4 episodes in the part. Nicola Bryant's great in it. Sharaz Jek. Sharaz Jek, I should have mentioned. Well, what a brilliant villain. And it's sort of, isn't it, the final, in some ways, I know the plot is all about drugs running and everything, but it's almost completes the kind of Robert Holmes arc of riffing off every Hammer horror movie. So this is Phantom of the Opera, isn't it? Yeah. With Sharaz Jek and Perry. And they've done Frankenstein with Brain of Morbius. They've done The Mummy's Tomb with Pyramids of Mars, and now you get Phantom of the Opera. Perfect in virtually every aspect. Stunning that could have been made in 1984. Absolutely brilliant. I must have watched it a couple of dozen times at least. And again, cements Davison in my mind as the best Doctor. That story goes out with a bang.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I remember at the time I was starting to think, gosh, this is a bit, I don't know, adult, because the way Sharaz Jek was with Perry, I do remember as a young teenager going, whoa, this is a bit freaky, a bit disturbing. And then going to, as I always say on my shows, and then the solution to the whole story was he had to go and milk a bat. There you go. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? But there you go. Now, we talked about death there, regeneration of the Doctor. Now, this is a big one for Mark, a really big one. Some Doctor Who fans, they really couldn't sleep that night. This is the moment.
Please hurry, Doctor. We must get Adric off the freighter.
That's it!
Now I'll never know if I was right.
I must save Adric!
Adric! Doctor!
There you go. I mean, I was a bit peeved because I was audio recording, so this didn't work.
Yeah. Look, it's great. I mean, I think I asked you when we were preparing this show, Brendan, does it count as a cliffhanger? Because it's obviously the end of a story there. But I think it does count as a cliffhanger. I also think that if the titles had not gone up in that fashion silently, with the broken badge from, where was he from? Alzarius or whatever, the mathematician's badge broken on the floor of using it as the gold to kill the Cyberman. It's proof positive he's dead, right? That if it just sort of ended with apparently he's blown up in a spaceship, I think you would have assumed that the first episode of Time Flight would have shown him miraculously escaping in a parachute. You know he's dead, so it fits that, oh my God, where do we go next thing about it. I wasn't that sorry to see the back of Adric. It also adds, but nevertheless, you never want to see a companion die, right? But you kind of do, because isn't he the first companion to die since, is it Sarah Kingdom, or
Sarah
is it
Kingdom? Yeah, and
yeah,
Katarina, yeah.
So it then adds jeopardy to the show. One of my loves, you know, probably I don't know whether it's blasphemy to talk about it on this show, but one of my great loves of Blake 7 was that they would kill off leading characters, and it adds to the sense of jeopardy. So you kind of think, well, if they're willing to actually kill off Adric rather than he just returns to the mathematics academy of some planet or other, or, you know, suddenly gets married off, you know, 30 seconds notice, like Leela. It adds jeopardy. You think, well, why wouldn't they kill off Tegan then? Why wouldn't they kill off Nyssa? Why wouldn't they kill off the next companion? So I think it's brilliant. John Nathan Turner decided to put it up in silence, didn't he? Based on something similar being done on Coronation Street, I think, as a character who died in PORE.
Yeah, Wendy's helping us here. EastEnders with.
Well, it was EastEnders, was it, with Peggy Mitchell? Right. It's absolutely great. And again, I'm sounding like a bit of a JNT fanboy here, but the other brilliant thing he did was to include a very short sequence, which turned out to be a fake by the Master in the first episode of Time Flight, to ensure that the Radio Times had Adric Matthew Waterhouse in the credit, in the list on the Radio Times of the actors in the next episode. So had you flicked through before watching that episode, thinking, oh, well, what's on next week? Oh, it's episode 1 of Time Flight, and noticed Matthew Waterhouse's name missing, it would have spoiled the surprise. So it was very, very clever to give Matthew Waterhouse that very small ditty in Time Flight episode 1. So I just love the kind of detailed lengths that Nathan Turner went to preserve these surprises, to have the impact. And therefore, oh my God, Earthshock. I mean, a great story. It's second
and he was so good
after Caves, but 2 cliffhangers. If you count the end of the story as a cliffhanger, that and the first episode, genius.
And I loved all that geeky stuff, that tree master anagram. He was always doing that. The portrait. He did it in most stories. He changed Anthony Ainley's name and all the rest of it.
Yeah, James Stoker was the actor in King's Demons, wasn't it? Which is an anagram of Master's Joke or something like that. Yeah, they'd always do that stuff. Fantastic.
So, death of a companion, and this was the big one for Mark. I was just a bit peed off that I was audio recording that. So I just want to remind everybody that the deaths in New Who were big, and that's our little moment. When we come back just after this moment or two, we're going to start arguing about the colorizations, aren't we, Mark?
We are.
Here we go. So there have been deaths since, and some of them I think have been quite poignant. For me, Face the Raven. Here we go.
Brackety man! Goodbye!
What do you think? I surprised myself when I watched those, and I actually thought, do you know what? The Clara, I didn't like Clara as a companion, but I thought her death was amazing.
Yeah, I did quite like Clara as a companion, done brilliantly well. I mean, actually, just those skits you put together there, Brendan, should remind us there's quite a lot of damned good stuff in Who. I mean, I know that, the last few years have just been absolutely grim, head in hands watching it. I mean, embarrassment watching it. But my God, there's a lot in right the way through to Capaldi, who, in my view, was a brilliant doctor let down by slightly poor scripts. But even some of the Capaldi stuff is absolutely fantastic and dramatic. And I did see, I think it was Tom in the chat said, when companions die, they've got to stay dead. Right.
Yeah.
And again, going back to Blake 7, that was it. You knew there was no way back for Gan or and made the ending so much more spectacular as well. So when you or Callie, you knew when she was killed at the start of season 4, she was going to stay dead. And what I don't like is even more frequently done in American comic books is, a death is not a death. So make them emotional, add to the jeopardy of the show. I think it's great. It adds to the jeopardy, adds to the risk. If the Doctor dies, he'll regenerate, but the companions, fair game. And I think that, actually companions having a sad ending is actually a lot more fulfilling than a companion like Susan or Leela suddenly and miraculously falling in love with a complete no-mark man after about 20 seconds and deciding to stay with them on the planet, or being abandoned on the planet with them. So, yeah, that's the way they should have kept. Perry should have stayed dead in Mind Warp, by the way.
Yeah, that was so dramatic. I know, what a cheat. I mean, I have to say, in schools, I started to see the peaks and troughs of Doctor Who, and the death of, I know he regenerated, but the Matt Smith speech, fantastic. And I actually thought it was so insightful from Stephen Moffat, that lovely idea that we're all different people throughout different chapters in our life. Some lovely, lovely stuff. So I actually think it's good when Doctor Who does actually address. I'm one of those torn people, Matt, because I don't like too much emotion in Doctor Who. I want to get on with the adventure. However, New Who, when it does it well, has done it outstandingly well.
Yeah, I completely agree. Better than the previous series. I mean, I think Eccleston's regeneration, fantastic, into Tennant. Tennant and the 10th Doctor and Rose being split at the is it Doomsday, the end of the second season, excellent. I also think the very complex relationship between Martha Jones and the Doctor, really, really well done. Unrequited love. But I think to really have impact, you've got to resist the temptation of bringing them back, retro doing it, and that's the problem. In Marvel comic books, that they always do that. And I think I'm not trying to be too bloodthirsty here. I just think it adds to the tension that you could know that this person is going to die. But if they survive what looks like a death, please do that within 2 minutes in the show, not within 2 years in the show, right? Because that's the way that you feel real jeopardy. Yeah.
Right, everybody, you've got a bit of sport now just to finish this off. Colorizations. Mark just threw it in there. So here we go. I'll just set it off, Mark, so to speak. But yes, the colorizations. I'm intrigued where you're going here, because there's 2 points. There's the colorization, and there's the butchering, as I say. Now, I saw these online. You can see how people, Darren Roundels, Rich Tipple, people are colorizing a lot of the Hartnell photographs.
Yeah.
Some of it with AI intervention. And so some of them look better than others. And of course, it brought to mind the debate we're about to have, which is how far are you allowed to go? So, I mean, to me, these just look so iconic. They look beautiful. Look at Mechanus. I mean, God, that's a beautiful shot. And I think the color enhances it. Close-ups of William Hartnell like this. I mean, it just looks cinematic. It looks powerful. So I do get your point in a way. And of course, I look at the 10th planet here, and whether the colors on her jumper are correct or not, who cares? I mean, I think, wow. But, and of course, I just want to show people, Rich Tipple, he did the colorizations of the Daleks and the War Games. And of course, he's got one out now on YouTube, the Time Meddler. Go on then. You think this is a fair game?
I do, yes. And in particular, I have to say, I loved what they did with the War Games. The 10-part initial original is terrific. Probably my favorite Troughton. But I could totally see what they were doing to try to bring it to a way that would be attractive to a modern non-geek audience. And I think the War Games did that well. They would have been filmed in color at the time had color existed, right? Yeah. It was not an artistic choice to put it in black and white. I think remaking Psycho in color would be, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho would be an absolute abomination, but they would have, this is what War Games would have looked like had the technology existed. I know they shortened it as well. So there's an editorialized decision, shortened it a lot, of course, removed all the padding. I think this is a great gateway drug for younger viewers to get into vintage Doctor Who. They might not go the whole hog, but I don't see any reason not to try and do this. Now, there's one downside that I will accept, and that is I think that the originals always need to be preserved and unambiguously presented as the original. So haven't we got a problem in one of the latest box sets? I haven't seen it yet, where they've used AI on Elizabeth Sladen, and there's a scene or two in the Android Invasion where she looks nothing like Elizabeth Sladen. I mean, that's not augmenting things. That's just playing in a sandpit with a graphic box. That shouldn't happen. But that's from the War Games. The previous one was the Daleks, wasn't it? With Russell. It just looks great. What's not to love?
I mean, this is where I'm torn. I feel as though this is where we started this discussion today about commerce and the commercialization of the BBC. Maybe this is the snag. What's wrong with colorizing 60s Who? I agree with you. I think for some reason it seems to make it more accessible for people. Some people have some sort of prejudice that they won't watch black and white. So of course, if you put it on color on BBC One, BBC Three, whatever, it works. It's just when they start to do editorial decisions. For example, why did they pick the War Games? It's a great story. It's 10 parts, but they said we're only going to do 90 minutes. I wouldn't have even bothered starting. But the other thing, Mark, is they didn't just do that, did they? They didn't just edit it to death. They then said, oh, actually, we've actually found time to put John Pertwee in it. And actually, while we're just playing with it, we've colorized it, but we're going to add some of Mark Ayres' music to give you a hint that the War Chief is the Master.
I loved that. I tell you why I loved that. because it was, you could still take it or leave it, right? So that's the sort of Easter egg I'm looking for total Doctor Who nerds. A casual viewer doesn't pick that up. They didn't edit in Patrick Troughton saying, "And in future, I shall call you the Master." It was a subtle, almost in joke for those who would recognize Marquez's music. Now, obviously, it wasn't intended for him to be the Master at the time because the Master hadn't been invented. But I think leaning into that is fine. I mean, there's also a kind of issue then if you're going to get sort of, we've got to preserve all of the, that's Philip Maddock, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you're going to get into things need to be preserved exactly as they were. What would you feel about remakes of, I mean, Sharda has been done, numerous times now. Now I appreciate it screws up continuity. So being a continuity fan of wanting a kind of linear timeline in a time travel series that each one builds on another is where I'd like to go. But theoretically, you could do an out of universe complete remake of the War Games. I wouldn't object to that. I mean, in James Bond, what was it? Never Say Never Again is just a remake of Thunderball.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's the same sort of story. It's not as good as Thunderball as it happens, but I don't consider it to be blasphemy that they attempted to remake Thunderball. I wouldn't consider it blasphemy if they attempted to remake Evil of the Daleks. When they've picked up some of the New Adventures series, like I've mentioned it several times now, Human Nature and Family of Blood, or Robert Shearman's Dalek, and there's a Cyberman one as well, which slips my mind, that they've then used to be episodes of the new show. They haven't stuck to them word for word. I don't have a problem with it as long as the original is preserved and accessible. You've got to be clear that the version as broadcast is the official version, and I'm absolutely adamant on that. I mean, despite the fact that now we would find it amazing that it was broadcast, possibly even at the time, I do think the Celestial Toymaker should include the nursery rhyme in full as it was broadcast. Even though it uses the highly offensive N-word. So I would preserve the original material absolutely unaltered, but I think we should be able to harvest it. I think we should be able to augment it. I think we should be able to play around with it without destroying it, just to see what we can do with it. I have no problems with that at all. That's from the colorized War Games. I think that's a fantastic addition and reimagining, which obviously couldn't have been done at the time for obvious reasons.
Well, my switchboard are now going off it, right? So basically, honestly, Mark, I mean, I thought this would be one of the bits where we would unite, where, honestly, colorize War Games if you want. If you want to make it shorter, because apparently the attention spans of the younger generations, but that's a load of rubbish, because you go and watch a Hollywood movie and it's 3 hours long. So I don't get that concept at all. But what's all this about? So I call it the Tinkerbell fairy dust of every regeneration of New Who. Why was that added? Because I'm sorry, that's not a custodian or curator of old Who. You're now actually imposing a New Who philosophy onto classic Who. When I was at Milton Keynes last year at the Utopia Doctor Who convention, Benjamin Cook, who was the editor for the colorizations, explained himself in a panel. And he said he'd been given instruction from on top, will be RTD, that the classic colorizations need to be given the same style and vibe as a New Who episode. So quickened, pacey music. I'm sorry, but that's not saying hello to a new audience. This is classic Doctor Who. What you're saying is we've changed it for you. I know what you're saying. The old one still exists as well. But we're selling a dud here. That's not how it was. Television history, you're thinking in War Games, I wasn't around, but that idea that at the end of War Games, you didn't even know if Doctor Who's coming back.
Yeah, I think they didn't know either, I think. Yeah.
But then to throw this in, and John Pertwee sat in the chair and everything, why?
Well, I mean, you can say why, but you could also say why not, right? I mean, you can watch the War Games. I have several times. Exactly as originally imagined. I think actually that regeneration thing was very elegantly done. Obviously, they didn't know at the time that the show would continue. They certainly didn't know at the time that if it did continue, John Pertwee would be the third Doctor. So it is a reimagining of it. I'm slightly concerned about what you say about trying to make it in the style of New Doctor Who. I mean, because obviously it just isn't in the style of New Doctor Who. You know, you might as well say, please, you know, give me some cut down Beethoven in the style of Taylor Swift. I mean, I don't know what, you know, it's just impossible to do. They're of different styles. But I like the fact that it links it all up as one linear story. Obviously, it's superimposed. In 1969, you know, nobody knew that those future generations would exist. We didn't even know that the series would continue or that John Pertwee would be the new Doctor. Keep the originals. There was an awful lot of padding in the originals as well, understandably, right? This was almost like making Saturday morning movies for kids. We just got to find some way of getting 25 minutes in the can. I mean, it's absolutely heroic, isn't it? I mean, how many episodes were there in the Hartland Troughton's era each year? 42 or something? It's crazy they could produce that amount of television on the budget they had. The War Games as 90 minutes, reimagined 90 minutes, was good. I mean, it's not as good as the original in my view, but it's a fast, action-paced, you know, different take on it. And I think we should have the confidence that they're in the Doctor Who catalogue that we should exploit it. You know, we should not destroy it. We should respect it. But it's perfectly okay to say, let's imagine the War Games was made today, or we're going to remake it. You know, we don't just need to put these things in aspic and just leave them there wholly untouched. We should never, ever brutalize or destroy the original versions. Look, I mean, I don't know when AI will be able to make the missing episodes rather than us going around trying to discover the remaining episodes of the Daleks master plan. But I want AI to make it. I'd want them to originally do the very best you can to reproduce the exact 25 minutes that would have been on screen of the Feast of Stephen, say, rather, you know, and here's all the information. We want it as accurate as possible. But if from that you wanted to try and make a 100-minute Dalek master plan colorized version, fine. I've got no objection to that at all. So the war chief, well, in his head, the war chief might have always been the master, but that's only in his head. That's clearly a retrofitting.
You see, this is the thing, Mark. And I'm asking you a daft question as a Doctor Who fan. Do you get the box sets as well? You know, the classic.
Oh yeah. I've got all of those. Yeah. How have we got to go? About 6 or 7, I think.
Yeah. So how far? And I do see a slippery slope. So the colorizations and what they've done. So you're happy with the new Who Doctors put into the War Games?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I want to, and I do own the original War Games.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to airbrush history. Yeah. Right. I want all of them. I own every extant minute of Doctor Who, apart from the 2 recent Master Plan episodes, because you know they haven't been released on DVD yet, and I own them all in physical form, and I want to do so. And people should give money to Film is Fabulous, because let's hope we can retrieve some more. I'm all for that, but I have the confidence in vintage classic Doctor Who that it is so great. I don't mind if you play with it in a sandbox and reimagine it, what it might be like, and people can take it or leave it. If when they come to releasing the box sets, they're all colorized and that's all I can watch, I will go nuts. But if they add on colorized editions or augmentations, I'm fine with it. In the same way, going back to one of my favorite stories, Kinder, Brendan, I like the fact that they've got, you can actually watch it without the snake at the end looking like a ridiculous inflatable, you know, thing that you'd buy at the seaside to go swimming in the sea, or the way that they've done it with Warriors of the Deep. So I want the original, but you know, but the Mercury in Warriors of the Deep looking sort of somewhere towards half decent adds to the story. They would have tried to have done that at the time if they could. So keep the originals, respect the originals, but have the confidence to play with the originals. I think you can do that without it being a blasphemy against the legacy of the show.
Do we then, that's the thing I'm torn with. Do we then give people, producers and editors, a green light to add their editorial interventions? So for example, one day, if we're talking about modern audiences are the key to these adaptions, modern sensitivities, Talons of Wen Chian, maybe one day that needs changing. I could go down many, many roads here. So you can see my point. Is this given a green light to a slippery slope where we start to lose the original because of modern sensitivities?
Well, that's possible. And as I say, I don't know where you stand on the Celestial Toymaker thing. I think I'm an outlier in that I would have included that on the audio, the initial nursery rhyme, right? So even though, I mean, I'd probably accept it needs to be explained that that it's going to be in there, right? Because it is such, it is now, rightly seen as such an offensive word. So I'm going as far as you could possibly ask me to protect all of the original stuff, even including the N-word in a William Hartnell story. Beyond that, and look, we can't stop this anyway, the genie's out of the bottle. If you want to completely reimagine Talons of Wing Chiang and change Lee Seng Chang into Paul Daniels or something, because otherwise it's sinophobic, and make sure that the Black Scorpion troops are not Chinese at all, but are all, I don't know, members of the 1890s Conservative Party, go ahead and reimagine it, release it on DVD, see if anybody watches it. They won't. It will not land. It will not be popular. And so it will stand or fall by its basic quality. The war games, I appreciate a split opinion. I've seen some people in the chat saying they quite liked it, others saying they didn't. So I'm not saying it landed perfectly, but I'm relaxed about people trying. If you want to recreate Talons of Weng Chiang in 4D with a better giant rat, fine, I'm up for it. If you want to create it removing Lee Seng Chang and the Black Scorpion because you consider that to be racist against Asian people, I'm not watching it. Play around with it if you want. I've still got the original to go back to. So can you make something different, possibly better and intriguing from the original text? Be my guest, do it. People will be doing this themselves on AI, right? I mean, so it's going to happen. It will happen in a kind of unofficial pirate sort of way. I'm very relaxed with that happening, as long as my shelf is full of every single unedited, unaltered, completely genuine copy of the original.
I'll put another button, which is this. When you see some editorial intrusions, so for example, that War Games moment, they may one day, I saw it in Rogue, they might chuck in the Fugitive Doctor or the War Doctor, or one of those where we're not quite sure whether they are really canon, proper canon. This is where and then you start having fights, and people on Doctor Who Monthly will start, and then people will start to write books. You are not alone. The gay history of Doctor Who, there wasn't one. And you start to get all this, and people revise. And I just think, yes, I agree. I loved it when they updated the Rutan in season 15. I loved the updated Merca in Rories of the Deep. I can live with that. So I know
the Mara in Kinder, excellent.
Yeah. So it's weird, isn't it? Because I'm torn, because maybe I'm just worried about those who are in charge.
Yeah, but Brendan, it's a but that you don't need to worry about. Get all of the classic run on physical media. So you're not reliant on BBC iPlayer that then, apparently randomly take down Terror of the Zygons and the Seeds of Doom, and I think Unearthly Child isn't on there anymore. Get it all on physical media. Yes, I am the former director of the Institute of Economic Affairs, Julie. But Doctor Who's much more interesting than economic affairs. Make sure you've got all of it you can. Pray to God and throw a few shillings the way of Film is Fabulous that we can recover some more of the episodes that have been lost. And if people want to go and play around with it, comment on it as you wish. I don't mind somebody writing the gay history of Doctor Who. It's just, I think it's complete nonsense and I wouldn't buy the book. But I'm not going to prevent people writing that book. I don't know if that book's been successful or not, Brendan, but I'm just not interested in it. But I'm confident enough in the legacy that if I own it myself, my own full collection, or as full as it can be, with still episodes missing, of course, that but I want them recreated. I've got the audios where we haven't got the visuals for all of the Hartnells and Troughtons. Go for it. And if people, as a sidebar, want to play around with it and muck it up, ignore it.
Well, there you go. I mean, I'm sure there's other bits. Now, you've already had your show today, haven't you? On UK Live Online, Argentina, more like Far Argentina. So now you've got that in the bag. You can now relax tonight, can't you? Well,
I will be on tenterhooks tonight. Really important game. On my show, we've decided to call our opponents for Argentina. And as I was saying, I'm confident as we're broadcasting live at this time Brendan, that England should win if we're only up against for Argentina. Nigel Farage has had a very good career spanning decades, but he's a man in his 60s who admits he smokes and drinks too much. Tina, in my view, doesn't have enough confidence. Ask Tina about what she thinks of England, and she says, you're simply the best. You're better than all the rest. You're better than anyone I've ever met. So if the opposition is for Argentina, then I think England can overcome them. My other great passion, along with Doctor Who and vintage science fiction in general, basically.
Well, I've really enjoyed those 2 hours, Mark, and I hope you'd love to come on again one day when you've got time. But I really enjoyed that. It's great to hear a Doctor Who fan just going through it. And I can see there's unfinished business about some of our debates. But thank you, everybody. I hope you've all enjoyed that with a sense for you. Obviously, you know how busy Mark is. And yes, he's got lots of other different pursuits. We know him from that. So it's been great to have you on, Mark. Thank you very much for giving us your time. Well,
really enjoyed it, Brendan. Thanks for inviting me on. I was delighted when you sent me what do we call them now? We call them X's, or do we call them tweets? I was delighted when you got in touch. Been a big fan of the channel. More power to your elbow, my friend.
Oh, thank you. Well, thank you. I'll certainly love to have you on again if you're available. But
definitely.
Thank you, everybody. Please like, subscribe, give it a hype, do the usual thing. Check out UK Live online, where you will also find Mark talking football, and also with Mike Graham, JB News, Talk TV, everywhere. So thank you very much. Bye, everybody.